Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Winging It Formula One podcast, which we're recording immediately after the end of a quite, for me, I'm going to say somber Bahrain Grand Prix. I'm Freddie Coates. I'm here with Nigel Chu and Adam Dickinson. All of us have just come off watching the race and reporting on it in our own ways. And obviously, there's one big defining factor, and that was the fireball accident after turn 3 on the run down to turn 4 for Romain Grosjean for Haas Formula One team after cutting over the front of Daniel Kvyat's Alpha Tauri. He speared into the Armco barrier. His car split in half, wedging him and the survival cell of the front of the car through the barrier, splitting the either the fuel collector or maybe something to do with the ERS batteries, and igniting his car, trapping him in a fireball for at least 20 seconds before he was able to be out of the fire when the medical car was able to assist him in release, but he was the one who basically pulled himself out of the car. Caused a race stoppage of at least an hour and a bit to rebuild to reform the barrier, and then the race restarted under the lights, obviously in Bahrain. Lewis Hamilton won that quite comfortably, with what seemed to be a race that, for me personally, I just wanted to get through. Lap 3 was the restart of it, and on that lap we were immediately under safety car as well after Lance Stroll came a cropper and was upside down, fortunately in quite a low speed accident. And then we had the race, really. I don't know what else to say. So how are you two? Are you guys doing all right? I'm a bit shaken up, I think you probably tell, but you guys
I think that's well summed up, Freddie. Yeah, I think I was listening to it, I wasn't watching it, and I wasn't reporting it on anything. So I just had it on in my ear while I was on for a walk. So I didn't get kind of the as sudden impact of the crash. It was kind of, I kind of knew something had happened in the way the commentary team described it. So kind of when I did see videos of it, then I was kind of knew something was going to happen in it. But yeah, it's, still really, really scary. And it looks like a crash from the 60s or the 70s, like the Niki Lauda crash, or, a lot of crashes where there'd be a shunt, the car would burst into flames. A lot of times the driver won't come out in any recognisable form. And even once it's in flames and kind of you see just this inferno coming up, and barely any of the car, to be honest, because most of it's through the barrier. And then you just see Grosjean appear out of it. It's kind of horrifying, because kind of when I was seeing those replays, I kind of assumed that was, after he got out. I didn't kind of realise until obviously he stepped out of the fire and over the barrier that he'd been in there. So yes, it's almost like a Hollywood crash. It's like you see in a car chase, you see someone bump off, and just kind of go into the wall, especially from the front on, from turn 4, from that kind of view. You just see it kind of, go into the background and explode, and then, stuff carries on. But it was actually real. So yeah, obviously questions and investigations need to be done on the barriers, and I'm sure they will be on that type of barrier on every track. But on the flip side, you've got the fireproof overalls have saved Grosjean's life, or saved a lot more damage being done to him, and the survival cell in the halo has again most likely saved his life there. So yeah, there's a lot to be thankful for, I think.
Nigel, what do you think? Because obviously we watched it on television, and it's more of an instant stomach punch, really, when you're watching it there. And the way it was edited was obvious, which was correct, was that it was cut away immediately as soon as possible and not shown. The first return of a shot that was seen was Romain sat in the medical car. What are your thoughts? What are your reactions?
Well, I think we're very lucky today, to be honest, to not be talking about worse circumstances. It is a miracle, quite frankly. And, you know, I remember MotoGP this year in Austria. There was another miracle miracle recovery that could have been a lot worse. And I think F1 was in that boat today. I mean, if it is just... Yeah, it's quite stunning. The imagery was just shocking, and it was one of the worst crashes I've ever seen. And, you know, I've unfortunately seen a few crashes where, you know, the worst does happen live, and I really thought that was a possibility today. Thank God it hasn't. You know, it brought me straight back to Spa last year in the F2 with Antoine Hubert and stuff, and yeah, I couldn't really watch it. I couldn't really watch after that. And so today, when I saw Grosjean was okay, it was huge, really. It's just a reminder of what these drivers are doing, their effort they're putting in, you know, working all their lives, their family and their friends, they're putting it all on the line every single weekend, you know, for our entertainment, essentially. But yeah, I think F1 is very lucky today. Grosjean is as well, because if he was knocked out, which could have easily happened with such a big impact, he would have been in that fire for a long time. And you know, I don't really want to think about what could have happened. But luckily, he was conscious. I think he was in the fire for about 20-25 seconds, and the doctors, just the medical team, were unbelievable. Just hats off to them. Without them, you know, they have just done an unbelievable job. I can't give them enough praise. And yeah, we're very lucky today, Freddie.
We are. Alan van der Merwe, who is the medical car driver, and Dr. Ian Roberts, who sits alongside him, both ran into the fire to put out Romain Grosjean and to get out Romain Grosjean and get him away from his wreckage. And yeah, Nigel, you say there about not really wanting to speculate on what could have happened, but I think we all know what could have happened if the car had gone in at a slightly different angle into that barrier. Where would he have sat with the halo if it not kicked round as it did? It could have gone further if it had been slightly different. Marshals could have been at risk as well. Marshals were at risk, and Marshals could have been even more at risk. So I think we all tip our hats tremendously to the safety that is there, that has prevented the worst here. You think back to what could have been in 2017 when we didn't have the halo, where the full frontal collision would have been on his helmet, a helmet which is nearly melted. The visor essentially melted onto Romain and presumably down his fireproof overalls, because it's just his raw face behind it. And there was no really issue there from what we saw. We saw him teary in the medical car, and I think I was surprised he wasn't keeled over in shock, if I'm honest. And that just speaks of the mettle that these drivers have. The fact that all 19 got back into the cars and committed to a full race distance, and the fact that, like you rose the MotoGP event, the fact that they all got on the bikes again at the Rebel Ring that week, and they had a double header of tracks then, as we do as well, for the Formula One, and got back on and got into it because they are elite athletes. And it does bring it back to people like Jackie Stewart, who pushed for so much safety in the late 60s, early 70s. And the fact that that's still developing now shows so much. So it speaks volumes about what it was like in the past, the fact that we can still have an incident like this now. But they're so few and far between. And I think the commentary team were talking about the only crash recently they can think of like that wasn't recent. It was 1989 at Imola, with Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, and that's 31 years ago. So, yeah, I think it thankfully is the freakiest of freak accidents, and yeah, we're very, very happy. I speak for both of you, and obviously, to say we're so happy that Romain Grosjean is safe, is alive. His family would have had to have seen that live, and that's one of the most heartbreaking things for me. One of my first thoughts was, which Haas driver is it? Magnussen's got a baby on the way. Grosjean's got such a family, and if it was 3 races from the end of his Formula One career to be killed, let's not step around it, to be killed, then it's really hard to deal with. And I think, I don't think Formula One needs to take a step back and look at itself, because the driver has survived. I think there should be pride with that, but yeah, maybe Armcos shouldn't have gaps in them. I don't know. I think we can have immediate reaction on that, but I don't know whether we should wait a bit to discuss.
I would wait, to be honest. I would
wait for the FIA statements on that. It's at a part. You go, Adam.
Yeah, I think just kind of a wider point is how important it is that the FIA is, and they are continually kind of looking at where these freak accidents can occur. And, that's the reason the halo was brought in, because Alonso was, potentially lucky to survive an incident with Grosjean at Spa. And, there was opposition to the halo coming in. And if it hadn't come in, Grosjean would have been killed now. And then everyone who opposed it would, I imagine, be thinking very deeply about themselves. And, there'd just be so much sadness that, they hadn't brought this in sooner. So I think, just the F1 is continually looking at itself, and even the freakiest of accidents where you don't expect it to happen, where just reducing the likelihood of that happening to the minimum, which, obviously, as we've touched on previously, isn't what happened in Turkey. And, we can say it's really unlikely for this to happen. But, what this shows is that even unlikely events do occur. And I think just the other point that I thought about is kind of, I think it's lucky, but I'd stop short of calling it a miracle, because it was F1's contingencies did work. Yeah. In that the survival cell worked, the halo worked, and the medical car and the marshals were able to respond to it quickly, which is all things that, as you said, F1 has built up, from the 60s with Jackie Stewart and those pioneers of, up to the present day. It's all there for this type of event. So, yeah, on the one hand, we'll wait to see what the FIA says, and obviously they'll need to look at it quickly and efficiently, because we're coming back to Bahrain and using that section of the track kind of in that configuration next week, and see what they think of and what they change, or if they change anything. But yeah, just it proves that freak events do happen, and how important it is that even when something really unlikely like this does happen, there's still contingencies in place that prevent drivers being killed.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me it is a miracle, mainly because of the amount of factors that go into the crash. And yes, it is the job of the medical team, the FIA, for it to be safe and that. But all it could have taken was 10 more seconds in the fire or something, or for him to be unconscious or to be a bit faster. And I really do think luck is a part of it. And but yeah, it is a testament to how much progress we have made in safety in Formula 1 and in motorsports. We've just come such a long way with with so many things, and yeah, I don't know. It was just a really tough crash for me to watch. And I watch a variety of motorsport, and that was one of the very, very few times I've had to like step back. Yeah, I'm just staggered how minimal Grosjean's injuries are. Hopefully, we'll find out to be confirmed. Obviously,
Yeah, it's suspected broken ribs is under evaluation currently, and he has minor burns to his hands and lower legs and feet, I think, which was released pretty early on from Haas on their social channels. So yeah, all the best with Romain Grosjean. He's in hospital in Bahrain. He's in the best possible place he can be, and I think, yeah, I'm closer to Adam on, I think, less miracle, but very close to it. Yeah, it still is wonderful that the outcome is as it is. I think we've probably said all we can on the matter for now. I think you can tell we're all a touch shaken up by this. But we'll go on. We'll talk about the rest of the Grand Prix, which did continue to go ahead after a lengthy stoppage to repair the barrier. And we had, after the red flag, we had another grid start. We had an interesting order for that grid start because Bottas got a really bad start on his first start. Dropped to about 6th, so he started 4th. I don't know if you've heard anything about why that was. I thought he should have started 6th.
It was because they took it from the safety car line. So they did about 60 metres of the first lap, and then they took it from there, by which time I think he'd been overtaken by Verstappen, but no one else. So yeah, I think because that was the last time before the crash that they could take timings from. So yeah, that's the reason.
Okay, cool. So from there, Hamilton drove off into the distance, really. Took his 95th Formula One victory from his 98th pole position. Did come under quite close attack from Max Verstappen, I thought. Red Bull kept him kind of honest, but there's also the inkling that I think Hamilton was just managing that gap to such a level. Hamilton was not pushing, would you say?
Yeah, I think he had it under control. I always think Mercedes have a little bit more to spare. I think today was one of those races. If Verstappen did threaten a bit more, I think Hamilton, had speed within him. So yeah, he kind of just cruised to victory relatively. Of course, because no win is easy, but yeah, it was a pretty typical Hamilton win, I'd say.
Yeah, I think on the whole, it was one of the worst viewing experiences of a Grand Prix. It went on for about 6 hours. It had a near-death experience, and then it was boring from kind of there on in, I thought. So yeah, I think, as you said, that he always, if he wanted to floor it and, really break free, then he could have. But, he's Lewis. He doesn't do that unless he has to. And he didn't. And then further back, you kind of had battles that you thought, oh, that could be interesting. And most of the time weren't. You had Bottas falling out of contention. So, yeah, overall, it was not a great race. In fact, I put it down as the worst of the season, I think.
It was uncomfortable viewing, I'd say. I think just after the crash, it was edgy, I'd say, to watch. So I wasn't really fussed if it was boring or not after what had happened, to be honest.
It's kind of comical to talk about race strategies and overtaking after, like you say, it was uncomfortable viewing. It was a case of watching the lap count and seeing. When we were about lap 30 odd, I was just thinking, okay, it'll probably stay like this. We'll be calling it a day soon, thankfully. I think in isolation as a race, it probably could have been quite interesting strategically, but we don't really have that. I think we might be able to have that luxury next week a bit, maybe. But yeah, unfortunately, there's been obvious marring of this event. Max Verstappen, did come home second. 3-stop strategy. Got the fastest lap. At the end, when there was a safety car for Sergio Perez, who we'll go into relatively shortly, having a heartbreaking engine failure a few laps from the end, there was a safety car, and there was an inkling perhaps that Verstappen with fresh tyres could maybe even give a little bit of a one overtake if they had one lap sprint at the end, which they didn't. And that seemed to be the closest Red Bull could get to victory. Third place went to Alex Albon after Sergio Perez's failure. Sergio Perez, once again, doing the job. Qualified 5th. Made a good start twice. Should have finished 3rd. I think that's all we can say.
Yeah, Verstappen couldn't have really done much more. Red Bull, I think they were a little bit off with their strategy. They tried to stay with Hamilton to undercut them because the undercut was massive around Bahrain, as it always was. And I think they just did the third stop to see, just in case Hamilton's tyres would fall off the cliff or whatever. It didn't work. They just ultimately didn't have the pace. Verstappen couldn't have done much more. But yes, Albon, bit lucky, I'd say, to get that podium. But his pace was actually not bad, relatively, again, compared to...
Relatively to Albon, yeah.
Yeah, compared to other Grand Prix this year, his pace wasn't too bad. It was still, still more than pit stops advantage away from Verstappen to 25 to 30 seconds, which, isn't good enough. But compared to other races, it wasn't too bad from Albon today.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of race that he needed to have at Britain, or, so further back, now it's kind of like, oh, it's all right. If this is kind of what he was building towards, it's not great. I know he said afterwards that he was taking felt like he made another step forwards. And yeah, as you say, his pace was pretty good. He got 4th on the grid. He was the only, he was the last car to be within a second of Hamilton. He's got a podium out of it, and I think it does. Yes, he was lucky to get it, but at the end of the day, you've still got to be there. So, while yes, he wouldn't have got it if Perez had gone up in smoke. Equally, he wouldn't have got it if he'd not been faster than the 16 other cars in the race or whatever.
Well, he was 1 second slower per lap than Verstappen.
Oh yeah,
average.
But
Wow.
But I just mean kind of when you're comparing it to other races where whoever's in one of the big 3 basically has been off the pace or retired or had some misfortune. He's not often been in a position to take advantage of that. Obviously, the 2 times he has at Austria and Mugello. So yeah, there's luck, but I think also you make your own luck a bit. And if you are in that position, if you are in 4th place, then you're the driver to benefit from that. So yeah,
it's the question with Albon is you can't, with the whole season, early on you can say, oh, his pace is really bad and he step up his pace, but realistically he's not going to suddenly be seconds a lap quicker, because that's not how it works unless there's something severely wrong with what he has been driving, which there isn't. So the step up for him is to then be there to take advantage, which he was. He obviously lost the position to Perez at the start because he qualified ahead of him, but he stuck there and got back into it when the result came to him. It's a mixture of luck, but he was there to pick up the luck. And I think there were a few stages in the race he probably should have been a lot quicker. For instance, when Perez was on hard tyres and he was on medium tyres and he was falling away from Perez. But I think, he was there to pick up the pieces, and it's a deserved podium. Perez deserved the podium as well, but that's how it is. It's not like Kimi Räikkönen's finished on the podium after driving backwards and everyone else has walked away. It's he qualified 4th and drove to 3rd.
Well, I've got a quote from Verstappen to the Dutch media. The interviewer said, "It's a good thing Alex had a podium today and scored some points." And Verstappen responded, "Well, yeah, that's your conclusion, but if you trail your teammate by 30 to 40 seconds, you can hardly say he did a good job. Still nice for Alex to score a podium, though."
Well, that's what
That's
you
basically
want
what
to hear,
we've said, isn't it?
Yeah, this is straight talking, and that's his teammate. So,
Yeah.
usually they're meant to be a bit, team game, but
Well, maybe
even
the team
Verstappen-
game is to push the team to get
Yeah.
Perez.
Yeah, I think that's even what
Maybe the
Verstappen
team
wants
game
now.
is he's just got to bully Albon. Got to be like, you scum, you shouldn't be here
Well,
in the
Well,
media.
all right, Adam.
And then,
all right.
that's the team.
Don't turn
That's what
into
the team are
Nigel.
telling him to do.
I've never called
Yeah,
him that.
and then he'll say that the pressure will mount up all on Albon, and then they can swoop in and bring Perez in. So yeah, it could be a conspiracy theory.
It's heartbreaking for Perez though today, I think, because he drove superb all weekend, managed his tyres perfectly. He was doing all the right things. He was. Oh, sorry, Freddie.
It's all right. Continuously, if you look back on Perez, you've got Imola, was set to finish third after Verstappen's failure. Unfortunately, the safety car strategy went against them because they assumed everyone would pit. Turkey, second, brilliant job. And then Bahrain, on set for third, brilliant job. 3 drives in a row that have been outstanding for Sergio Perez. And yeah, what more can he do in that car?
I feel less bad now that he has got a podium. If he'd not got one last time out, and then again he'd suffered some massive misfortune, I think that would really sting. I think it is a nice that he has got one for the season. But yeah, as you say, he's, especially where you look at where Lance Stroll has been, he scored 2 points since his podium at Monza. Kind of just where you compare those two, it's just absolute night and day between them.
It's so costly though, the Perez engine failure though today, because if you look at the constructors, I think McLaren have got a pretty relatively big lead now. So it's a huge moment in that battle for third.
Speaking of that, McLaren picked up 4th and 5th. Norris ahead of Sainz, 22-point haul, that is, which would have been obviously a position lower if it wasn't. So it would have only been a few points difference to Racing Point, with 15 points for a third place to Perez that should have gone their way. Perez would have all but sealed fourth in the Drivers' Championship with that. But now Ricciardo is in 4th with 102 points to Perez's 100. And Norris and Sainz are hot on the heels as well, both in the late 80s of points, I think. So there's a few things heating up still to go, because it could have all been Sainz sealed delivered.
Or Sainz sealed delivered. I genuinely thought that was what you said. But yeah, it's a 19-point turnaround. That's really good in the constructors, which is just it's a lot to drop. And McLaren are the team that I said wouldn't get it. I thought it'd be between Racing Point and Renault, so that's gone well.
Bodes well for next week.
Yes. Who would be your driver of the day, do you reckon?
Sainz had a good one. Perez, I think, had a very good one. Nigel?
I know a lot of people, going with the medical driver, aren't they? But if we want to stick to the F1 grid, I guess.
Of course, the medical driver is an honorary driver of the day.
Yeah.
The sport actually have put together an honorary driver of the day for Alan van der Merwe. So
probably Hamilton. I'd have to be boring.
Yeah. No, he controlled it, didn't he?
I will say, though, I think both McLaren drivers had a great race today, especially Norris, who has been slightly off form recently. He had some great overtakes, made the strategy work, and Sainz he was on softs at one point, wasn't he? He made the softs.
He took the softs longer than most took the mediums.
Incredible, because the soft tyre was not working at all, even though Pirelli recommended he should do a two-stop strategy by using 2 sets of softs before the race, which confused me. But yeah, it was a great...
cooler. The race obviously went on a lot later than originally planned. The soft tyres were going off in FP1 in the hot track temperatures in the daytime FP1, in the night, a much cooler night race that this became as opposed to the twilight start. The soft tyres, I think, came into their own a bit better than they would have done. The hard tyres seemed to perform pretty well, I thought, as well, though. So
yeah, the hard tyre was the tyre to be
day.
on. Yeah, the hard tyre was the tyre to be on, and I think that's where I thought Verstappen might have been able to challenge because he had 2 sets of hards compared to Hamilton with just one. Didn't happen in the end, but yeah, good day for McLaren.
I think especially just seeing where they have been after qualifying, they were, kind of by far the worst positioned team for that third place battle in the, Renault had both cars making it through to Q3. Racing Point had Perez qualifying 5th, I think. And then you had, I think, was it Norris who got through to Q3, in 9th. So it kind of looked there like they could take a bit of a hit. But yeah, they managed to turn around. So well done to them.
So yeah, good points all for McLaren. Moderate points all for Renault. It was kind of a weird weekend for them. Ricciardo had good pace in quali. Ocon had good pace in quali. There were 2,000ths between them, which, speaks to Ocon finally breaking his duck on out-qualifying Ricciardo in the dry, but not quite. Ricciardo got that a little touch more than Ocon. It's 13-1 in qualifying for them too. So Ocon only beating him in Styria. It felt to me a bit strange for their management of the race, Renault. I think they had the pace to potentially get some decent points. They probably should have been, Ricciardo should have been a bit closer at the end to Sainz, should have been ahead of Gasly, but wasn't, due to a few sort of weird calls with Ocon, who was the slower driver, holding up Ricciardo. He's not so much of a team player. I remember in Formula E a couple of years ago when Alex Sims was teammates with Antonio Felix da Costa, and da Costa was still in the fight for the title sort of most of the way through the season in season 5 Formula E. And as soon as da Costa was behind him and they both were showing good pace, Sims goes, "You want me to let him pass so that he can do this and go ahead for the championship?" And that's team playing. That's how you play the team game. And it looks to me like Ocon would just never say anything like that based on this race. He was just like, "There's a car, I have to defend, my life depends on it."
I really like it. I think in the world that we are in now with F1, where everything is so calculated and the optimal strategy and the optimal time for going out for qualifying, everything is calculated by computers, and the one thing that can scupper all of that is human stubbornness, and I love it. I think it's great. I think there should be more of it in the sport because it mixes things up. It makes things tasty. So yeah, obviously it's not best for Renault when they're trying to sell a Clio, but I just like it. I think
I like it as well.
It's an antidote to kind of all the mechanisation and technologicalisation in F1.
Technological advancement.
I like it as well, but for Renault and for Ocon himself, it does not do him any favours, because if you say Renault drop him or whatever and he's looking for another team, this is a factor which other teams won't like because they like the team player. So it doesn't do him any favours at all, really. But Renault have dropped off, it looks like, compared to McLaren and Racing Point. I think their qualifying pace is strong, so they're able to switch on the tyres. But then in the race, this is going against them. And they seem to have quite high tyre wear compared to Racing Point and McLaren, from what I've analysed, I guess. I'm only sitting at home, so
Talking about what you said there, Nigel, about it not doing Ocon any favours with this stubbornness. The team I kind of look at that it wouldn't do any favours for would be Mercedes, where Ocon obviously is a junior driver. They funded his career basically until now he's with Renault. And the reason Bottas is still in that seat, we'll speak about Bottas very soon. The reason Bottas is in that seat is because of how good a team player he is, how amazing Mercedes is as an atmosphere now that they've got away from the Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry years. And if you bring in Ocon, if he's got the pace to match Hamilton there, it would be an unharmonious relationship to such a level. If Ocon got even a sniff of having to defend from Hamilton, then it would be putting him out onto the dust, onto the grass if it was a different track. And Bottas is not like that, and that's why he's still at Mercedes. So I think it's great to see some good racing. But for Ocon, I think, it's just another string to sort of remove from his bow, is being a team player.
I'd agree. Although on the flip side, if I was Hamilton, I wouldn't be too worried, to be honest. I don't feel like there's going to be loads of times where he's going to end up behind Esteban Ocon having
in a Mercedes
through. Yeah, kind of. I completely get your point. You know, it's not. And
not
I
conducive to
do
a
think
lengthy career.
Yeah, I do think 2022 he will be out of a drive, to be honest, from what kind of I've seen, and we can go into this another day, but you know, it's good future planning to be thinking about those types of things. And you know, it's not, I think also pick your battles. You know, it didn't really feel like he had much to gain from it other than, I don't know, putting down a marker like psychologically in his team. I don't really understand. Obviously he's the one that's staying on the team, so I don't know whether that came into it in his head, but yeah, I think, you know, if it was for a podium position or something and he was going, no, I want to stay out here, you know, fair enough. But if you kind of, you know, if you just, it's just going to come down the line to haunt him later on in the season or his career.
He'll get an Alpine out of it though, and that's a cool car, so maybe.
It's the worst company car on the grid though, I think.
Fair. It's not an Aston Martin or Ferrari, it's true. Or a Mercedes Project One.
Or a Honda
NSX, great car. Splitting the Ricciardo and the Ocon is Valtteri Bottas in a stunning 8th place finish for a Mercedes car. After a poor start on lap 1, where he drops to 6th behind Ricciardo and Albon and Perez and Verstappen, and already behind Hamilton. He then had an okay second start and then got a puncture and had to pit, and basically spent his days trying to claw back any chance of a decent points finish, which didn't come. He was up with like 10 laps from the end. He was 5 seconds ahead of George Russell. And that's not good.
He had no pace at all. Just it's his second weekend in a row where his pace deficit is just not there. This time, I'm pretty sure there was no damage to the car, so we can't use that excuse. But yeah, I'm not sure what's happened. It just seems Bottas isn't handling the tyres like he used to, perhaps compared to earlier in the season. He's not on top of it compared to Hamilton, or maybe Hamilton has got on top of it more as the season has gone on, and that's exacerbating the gap between them, perhaps. But it's just not there for whatever reason. I can't really explain it. But yeah, his second place in the World Championship is in big danger if he can't improve a bit next week.
Yeah, I think partly what we saw is the difference between Hamilton and Bottas. That, you know, he's fast in terms of pace, but you know, kind of this is one of the areas that he is weaker at, is coming through the field. It also made me think about how good is this Mercedes in terms of once it actually gets behind a car. We've seen several times over the season it has struggles kind of to get past and keep itself cool and keep itself functional well, getting past or working through a train. So it just kind of make me think, if there were...
It's only in Bottas's hands, though.
That definitely comes into it. I don't know if it is Bottas's hands, actually, because I was about to say this. Hamilton was behind Vettel for so long in Turkey.
True.
I think on the flip side would be at Monza, where Bottas spent like half the race stuck in 5th, and Hamilton kind of carved his way up to about 7th from 16th or whatever.
Then if you look at that, the cars that Hamilton passed to be able to do that are the same cars that Bottas was able to pass today. It's basically the same cars ahead of Bottas that are the same cars that were ahead of Hamilton. And if there'd been a few more laps, maybe Hamilton could have passed them in Monza, and maybe Bottas could have passed them today. But it seems to be that they can get past the slower cars, but the midfield is much easier to get mired in. And we've criticised Albon and Gasly in the past and Red Bull quite a lot for being mired in the midfield and getting stuck behind. And I think Mercedes is the Mercedes issues with that. Maybe it takes a little bit off of their backs, because it's clearly very hard for a fast car to get through the midfield anyway.
It makes me think, if there was a serious competitor to Mercedes this season, I think that'd be quite an interesting angle to it. But there isn't, so it's kind of the odd race where one of them
if we had a championship battle, it would be very interesting.
Yeah, but it's not. The other thing that they mentioned in commentary was how often Bottas seems to be getting debris in.
Does he not see it? I don't know. Do other people see it?
Is he going around with like magnets on the front wing or what? I don't really understand. But yeah, I don't know. It's just another interesting tidbit.
Yeah, it is.
Cheers,
it's an interesting tidbit. He had his chunk of Ferrari inside his car in Imola.
Who? Jack Nicholls or Bottas?
Jack Nicholls. And Jack Nicholls also had power steering issues during the Turkish Grand Prix, and spun quite a lot. He doesn't. The thing with Bottas seems to be that he doesn't really help himself. He had the bad start. That wasn't the puncture, basically, and yeah, he put himself in positions that led to the issues. He's had a fair share of bad luck as well, and the fact that not the majority of other people haven't hit the debris, but we saw a few front wings crack today. Daniel Ricciardo's plank seemed to go on the bottom of the car at the end. Lando Norris got a lucky escape of basically being in the back of the train for the whole race on lap one. His front wing went. And I think a similar thing happened to Vettel. It's not a. I think the word of the weekend is abrasive on tyres, but it's abrasive on cars. It's Bahrain, so.
It's abrasive.
Abrasive, yeah.
It's nearly an anagram for abrasive as well.
Bahrain Civ. The final points position went to. My brain's like a sieve. Final point position went to Charles Leclerc. 10th place for Ferrari. Vaguely tidy. He seemed to get a few good moments and a few poor moments. And that's the same, really, of every race for Ferrari.
Yeah. I mean,
I thought Ferrari would be quicker this weekend than they were.
Yeah, I think you two both predicted a Ferrari podium. Well, yeah, the pace just wasn't there. The track late. I think it was always going to be a struggle, and just tough. It's tough. I think next week will be the same.
I don't know if you do that.
I think, but yeah, is one. I think Leclerc was someone who a lot of people thought, and possibly me, I can't remember, thought, he could be a surprise.
He can do something special, can't he?
Yeah, and he didn't.
I think he did, to be fair, to get a point in that.
Based on Vettel's performance, maybe he did do something a lot special. Vettel,
that's
finally getting going. Vettel got overtaken, and then was falling off the back in 18th position. The last of the runners after Stroll and Grosjean were out, and he was falling off of Kevin Magnussen's pace. So Vettel was basically saying how different the car was feeling to the past 2 days. I don't know whether that's due to car damage or whether it's due to anything different. But if Leclerc was feeling similar differences with the car to the previous few days, then he did a much better job. But we haven't heard the complaints that we did from Vettel from Leclerc. So
no.
We haven't spoken about Gasly. He finished 6th due to arguably being saved by the late safety car to not being passed by Ricciardo or Bottas. But 6th place is a very good position for him. Good points for AlphaTauri in a weekend where their pace seemed to be a little bit just off the points, around Ferrari pace, I'd say.
I thought it was better. They both made it to Q3, and they and I think through on an FP3 they did quite well. I think they were doing all right, and yeah, again, I think it comes back to
that's a good point.
I think and that was 11th with Kvyat plus a 10-second penalty, I believe, for a quite harsh.
Yeah, with a very bad start.
Collision.
He ends up in 19th, and then collided with Stroll as well as Grosjean.
So I think and again with Gasly, he got lucky, but he made his own luck to be in the situation. He was in 6th in the first place. So, yeah, I think a good weekend for AlphaTauri. Did they score more points than Renault? They scored the same points as Renault.
Yeah, basically.
So yeah, I think it's a bit weird with them. You don't really know what they're racing for. They just kind of turn up and surprise you on a weekend and do well, and you think, oh, that's nice, and then they kind of move on to the next weekend. Yeah, good on Gasly.
Yeah, it was a great strategy because he changed to hard tyres after the red flag, didn't he? And so he went hard, then hard again, I think, going off memory, which was a fantastic, quite almost a minor masterstroke, I'd say, because hard tyre was comfortably the best tyre. But
only driver to do at the red flag 2 stops.
Are we laughing at Adam?
Oh, it's just, is that another
appropriate?
No, I was thinking, is that another award that we're going to do, the minor masterstroke of the day? And it's for something that is not absolutely mind-blowing, but it's also nice. It caused a good result for someone.
It's a good job. It deserves a thumbs up. Thumbs up.
I think it's a great strategy.
Well done, AlphaTauri.
Yeah, harder to do that on your phone. There you go.
We don't know. I don't know if it's going to show up in the recording of this Zoom call, but on the Zoom call, there's a button that says reactions, and you can put up a thumbs up. So we've done that.
So minor masterstroke of the day goes to AlphaTauri.
We'll come up with a jingle for that for next week. So for the drivers out of the points who we haven't spoken about, I'm going to ask you two to give some brief, quick responses.
No, not this.
I think it's good.
Bring it.
Good. Yeah, see, Adam wants to do it, and that's 50-50 split. And I think he's a bit taller than you, Nigel, so maybe it's more of a 60-40 split. So, okay. Kvyat, Nigel, go.
Unjust penalty.
Yeah.
I'll go for it.
Yeah.
Cool. George Russell in 12th. Adam, you first.
Very close to points. You just needed a few more drivers to crash or have a mechanical, and it
story of his life.
It wasn't a crazy enough race for him ultimately.
Yeah, solid.
That's nice. Nigel's very much going for the one word. Adam's going for the brief.
Snippet.
Okay, 13th. Vettel. Sebastian Vettel.
Oh, good. I expected a bit more from Vettel, and after qualifying and giving his form at Bahrain, I thought he would do better, but just couldn't. The car, I don't know what was up with it. I mean, I think he might have had damage because I think he touched Magnussen early on in the race on the second restart. Not quite sure, but
Magnussen came into the back of him when he stopped.
Yeah, that was it.
Stroll flipped, so he might have had a loss of downforce to the rear end of the car.
Yeah, possibly.
And yeah, Vettel's a very rear-dependent driver, to be fair. Adam?
I think it maybe does. When you're looking at his result in Turkey and you're thinking, is this a turning point towards the end of the season, or is it a one-off freak result in a freak race? And I think it kind of points to that being more of the latter rather than the former. But he's only got to endure 2 more weekends of this, and then he can be at Aston Martin. So just get through it.
There's a driver in there, and he's not been able to extract really anything.
It was.
Yeah. 14th place, Nicholas Latifi.
Completely under the radar. I didn't notice him all weekend, I'll be honest.
Adam, you're just going to ask who?
There's. I don't know anything about it. I don't remember anything about his race. He turned up, he drove. He's like Julius Caesar. He turned up, he drove, and then he's going to stay in the country for another week.
All I noticed about Latifi was that he had a dire qualifying and got an excellent start for the first start, then got a woeful second start and reversed all of his good work. And that's about it. Yes. Kimi Räikkönen, 15th position.
He had
Woo.
Bottas behind him for a bit, didn't they?
They all had Bottas behind
With
them
a
for
broken front wing as well, which I thought he carried that
Well,
front wing for pretty much all the
yeah.
race, I think. So
That'll be my brief thought.
Did it?
Rolling
I
back
thought they
the
changed
years.
it.
Oh.
I think they did change it because he had then a whole tete-a-tete with Daniel Kvyat after his
Yeah.
second time penalty.
Yeah. They get a like Seb, there's a driver in there.
2007. Antonio Giovinazzi.
I don't know.
That's not the Italian national anthem. At least the one that I've heard. He wasn't too far away from Q2, actually. He was only...
Good pace recently in qualifying, Giovinazzi.
I think he was it 0.027 away from Lando Norris.
Who a fun fact in your head.
Did he get to do a final lap? I can't remember. But yeah.
Lando backed out because everyone else didn't improve enough.
Yeah. So, yeah. Giovinazzi, he nearly made it to Q3. Q2. Probably
looks
not
like quite
Q3.
a disappointing race, really, if he had that kind of pace to finish behind his teammate and both Williams.
Yeah, I'd probably, and even Seb, to be fair. Yeah, I'd probably agree. Yeah, onwards, and then I don't know, plateau.
So 2021. Nigel,
Yeah.
anything to say about the luscious locks of Antonio Giovinazzi?
Nothing from me, Freddie.
Lusciously locked Antonio Giovinazzi, maybe. Kevin Magnussen, I think, not really, basically where you'd expect the Haas to finish.
Yeah, especially after the crash. Being his teammate.
Mine might be elsewhere.
It's even harder, even for a hardhead like Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you were going to, obviously, we don't know the drivers at all. If you were going to kind of pick, maybe the most mentally hard driver, I think Magnussen would be up there, but, it's always going to affect you. And, yeah, again, I don't really know much about his race. He pootled around. And, yeah,
Perhaps the back of Vettel and had to drop back at the second safety. Second
actually, I think
safety car.
What I'd take from that is if you're Mazepin and or Schumacher looking at next season, thinking, going to be an F1 driver, going to drive the Haas.
Yeah.
It's not great.
The 2022 Haas.
We can maybe talk a bit about this a bit more next week. I don't know, but
we'll have a lot of off-season discussion about this.
If Magnussen and Grosjean are kind of getting these performances out of the Haas, who are two proven performers and have got podiums in F1, having two rookies coming in, one of whom is a pay driver, doesn't maybe bode too well, I'd say.
I
so
think
my biggest takeaway from
the opinion of everyone there, Adam.
I think my biggest takeaway from Magnussen's race is about Schumacher and Mazepin.
Nice. And we've spoken about the last of the classified drivers, who is Sergio Perez. I think there is not really anything else for us to say there. We've covered a few bases in this podcast. Obviously, we started very muted, very somber tone to this podcast, and we've progressed to talk about the race. We hope you have enjoyed listening to it. It was we know it's going to be a tough day for everyone watching that race, and all our thoughts are with everybody who watched the race, who was affected by that race, who is at the race.
Get well soon, Romain.
Get well soon, Romain. If this is the end of his Formula One career, that is incredibly.
I hope it's not.
Sad. I
do really hope he gets the chance to see it out, because I do think he deserves it. He's been on the grid long enough, and
2009 was his first Grand Prix.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a Roman thing to do to kind of go out early. The king of holding on to a seat as long as possible. I think it would feel quite sad if this was kind of how he bowed out. I think.
I agree. I hope we can see him back on the grid, if not for the Sakhir Grand Prix, for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
All our thoughts to everyone who has been involved today, and I think a hand, obviously, for Alan van der Merwe, Dr. Ian Roberts, the incredible safety team on the ground in Bahrain, the marshalling team who dealt with who ran straight. If you watch the replays, you can see them running straight to the fire, and that is completely against every solid instinct in the world. So fantastic job from everyone there. And I think we'll start this podcast as we've begun it with a thank you. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for watching, and thank you to everybody in Bahrain. All the best. We'll see you later on in the week to go over probably a lot of what we've spoken about already today, and to look ahead to hopefully some very positive news. So yeah, thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.